Well, thank you, Carolyn, so much for that. What we'd like to do now would be to put our attention upward and onward onto the Great Master's letter. And we will have a few readings from that, and these readings will be followed by a discussion, which will be led by our president, Eugene Jennings. And do we have somebody who can read the first reading? Do we have?
The doctrine we promulgate, being the only true one, must, supported by such evidence as we are preparing to give, become ultimately triumphant like every other truth. Yet, it is absolutely necessary to inculcate it gradually, enforcing its theories, unimpeachable facts for those who know, with direct inference, deduced from and corroborated by the evidence furnished by modern exact science. For our doctrines to practically react on the so-called moral code, or the ideas of truthfulness, purity, self-denial, charity, etc., we have to preach and popularize a knowledge of Theosophy. It's not the individual and determined purpose of attaining nirvana, the culmination of all knowledge and absolute wisdom, which is after all only an exalted and glorious selfishness, but the self-sacrificing pursuit of the best means to lead on the right path our neighbor, to cause to benefit by it as many of our fellow creatures as we possibly can, which constitutes the true Theosophist.
It is time that Theosophy should enter the arena. No messenger of the truth, no prophet has ever achieved during his lifetime a complete triumph, not even Buddha. The Theosophical Society was chosen as the cornerstone, the foundation of the future religions of humanity. To achieve the proposed object, a greater, wiser, and especially a more benevolent intermingling of the high and the low, the alpha and the omega of society was determined upon. In view of the ever-increasing triumph and at the same time misuse of free thought and liberty, how is the combative natural instinct of man to be restrained from inflicting hitherto unheard of cruelties and enormities, tyranny and injustice, if not through the soothing influence of brotherhood and of the practical application of Buddha's esoteric doctrines? Once unfettered, delivered from their dead weight of dogmatism, interpretations, personal names, anthropomorphic conceptions, and salaried priests, the fundamental doctrines of all religions will be proved identical in their esoteric meaning. Osiris, Krishna, Buddha, Christ will be shown as different means for one and the same royal highway of final bliss, nirvana. All of us have to get rid of our own ego, the illusory apparent self, to recognize our true self in a transcendental divine life.
Among the few glimpses obtained by Europeans of Tibet and its mystical hierarchy of perfect lamas, there was one which was correctly understood and described. The incarnations of the Bodhisattva Padmapani, or Avalokiteshvara, of Tsongkhapa, and that of Amitabha, relinquished at their death the attainment of Buddhahood, that is, the summum bonum of bliss and the individual personal felicity benefit of mankind. And it is we, the humble disciples of the perfect lamas, who are expected to allow the Theosophical Society to drop its noblest title, that of the Brotherhood of Humanity, to become a simple school of psychology. No, no, our brothers, you have been laboring under the mistake too long already. Let us understand each other. He who does not feel competent to grasp the noble ideas sufficiently to work for it need not undertake a task too heavy for him. But there is hardly a theosophist in the whole society unable to effectually help it by correcting erroneous impressions of outsiders, if not by actually propagating the ideas himself. Oh, for noble and unselfish men to help us effectually in that divine task. All our knowledge, past and present, would not be sufficient to repay them. This is the great master's letter, the Mahachohan's letter.
Thank you so much. We will now have a dialogue, a plenary dialogue about these remarkable words and the influence of the Mahachohan's letter with Theosophists. And first we will hear a few introductory words, correct? And then we will have a question and answer and dialogue. We would just simply ask that if somebody has a question or wants to make a comment, to stand up so that we can hear you better. And I will give you to Eugene Jennings.
So, this letter is nothing less than amazing. Why? And again, this is the dialogue. Why? While you're thinking, hand, yes.
So the question was, what?
It's nothing less than amazing.
Okay, why is it less than? It's very easy to accept, to read it, think about it, and see the truth of it, and to accept it. And it was written very authoritatively, which typically we don't view the teachings of Theosophy as being authoritative in the sense of you have to believe this. But he's not telling us what we have to believe. I think in a lot of ways he's telling us what the society or what the movement needs to do, what the direction is that it needs to take. That's what makes it amazing to me, because not too many people can do that.
No. In this letter, as was just pointed out, is not only inspiration, there's information about every aspect of Theosophy, and there is clarification of what a Theosophist is. That last line said it all. And again, it's really a challenge, and it makes, if I have to speak for myself, me ask myself if I can ever be a Theosophist. What does it say? That last sentence, and again, I guess I better put on my glasses. They are as far from the solution as they were, just in terms of this whole teaching. The whole issue of social injustice, global injustice, and even what we think Theosophy is. And I'm really, really cutting to the end, but Let me take a moment. You have the actual reading, the selections that were chosen? The last one? Yeah, just the last one. Nope. Okay, so then I'm really seeing things that don't exist. Okay, so forgive me. Forgive me. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of getting to in my own head. But the idea that Theosophy is really what we do. It's not a bunch of teachings. It's not being an occultist. It's not about alleged pseudo-esoteric information. It's not about nirvana. I mean, how did we even become attracted to Theosophy? It wasn't because we wanted to work. We were looking for something. Personality, ego, and I wanted something. The very thing that we want, perhaps, that is embraced under the banner of nirvana and all of knowledge, would not be enough to repay an individual who would work for the world. That's a very disturbing thought to me. Now, the letter is amazing because it speaks about all of Theosophy in 4.5 pages. Has everyone read the entire letter? Or let's say the reverse. Who has not read the entire letter? Please raise their hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 5. Please read the letter in your spare time for the rest of your life. Posted on the website. Definitely it's in Theosophical articles. It's actually all over the world. But, yes?
Does this master have a name? Do we know? Who said this?
Does this master have a name? And again, let's play. Does a name matter? Does a body matter when it comes to the teachers? But the answer to the question is yes. Yes. and again, the reason why we would say it's secret, only because if we're not looking at the general information that's provided, but again, going back to the secret doctrine, around pages 200, 209, when she speaks about the true lineage of Theosophical teaching, and that true initiator that sacrifices the very being, which has been represented in that section on the true hierarchy. Those individuals have a glimpse of true teachers. Those beings or souls, not bodies, who have given up their own nirvana, if you will, their own Buddhahood to do what? To help others.
There must be something spectacular about doing service that, you know, if it trumps nirvana, what might that be?
What might it be about service, true service, that trumps nirvana?
There's a way to nirvana, and if people don't there's a way to nirvana, and if people don't do true service, the way will peter out. So the true service is to keep that way alive.
Okay, so the true service is to keep the path to nirvana alive. Where is nirvana? It's not a place. State of consciousness. So, is it dead? Is it alive? Dormant in quite a few, or have we simply obscured? This is, again, was read in, actually, I did see this one on the board. And the whole paragraph goes as this. Mystical Christianity teaches self-redemption through one's own seventh principle. Interesting, seventh principle. The liberated Paramatma, called by the one Christ, by others Buddha. This is equivalent to regeneration or rebirth in spirit, and it therefore expounds just the same truth as the nirvana of Buddhism. Here's the catch. All of us have to get rid of our own ego, the illusory apparent self, to recognize our true self in a transcendental divine life. What does that mean? And what does it have to do with service?
Please stand up when you start.
Although it is not a goal of true service to want to experience some enlightened state, one has the possibility of it by having a really open heart in providing that service. You have direct experience and experience the interconnectedness with other sentient beings.
Okay, this idea of interconnectedness as it relates to this letter, what does ego do to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to reflect back on service. For me, the purpose of service is to experience the oneness and the unity of all of life and to help with the evolution of humanity so that we can go forward as a family.
Okay, thank you. Well then, let's switch gears for a moment. What would happen if we experienced the oneness of life? Rich? Oh, in the back. Oh, no.
Sorry.
Well, I, of course, don't know anything about nirvana, but I do know, through a little bit of imagination, the beauty and good that's in everybody, if you look closely enough to see it. And to see everybody, all this beauty come out in the world and working together is a lot easier to picture than any nirvana. And this is again what the Theosophical movement is about, to show the common cause, if you will, the cause, a common origination of all humans, and working together for beauty. And so that really life itself, in my opinion, would be nirvana if everybody worked together and loved each other and saw the beauty in everyone and everything.
Okay, thank you, Rich. If everyone worked together. Now let's go back to the question, in a sense, what would happen if we, let's rephrase, realize the unity? If everyone in here could realize unity right now, what would happen?
We'd lose our ego, I believe, and as a consequence, service would just emerge from us, because when we're one with all, and when we don't have our ego, we will be of aid, or it's, I guess, altruism, putting others before self.
Okay, great. So if we lost this thing that doesn't exist, then we would find something that does exist, doesn't exist. But according to this letter, what would be the most, and based on this last comment, what would be the most fundamental, immediate awareness?
That I am the other, that I am the other man, the other woman, the other child,
the animal suffering.
Thank you. I am the other, suffering.
Well, I think it brings a state of mind of peace, but yet an active peace and, let's say, spirituality, and all the clutter of our usual daily activity and worrying about this, or, oh, there's that person I don't like, I have to get along with them. You know, all that clutter of the lower mind can be dissipated.
Thank you. All the clutter can be dissipated. Now, I agree with the clutter because we live in clutter. All we have to do is watch what goes through our mind to see the clutter. I have to diverge just for a moment because I love asking clients, how many thoughts do you have a day? And clearly we have billions of thoughts a day. And then I say, how many thoughts do you think are reflective of your problems? And they'll give me some number. And then I will ask them, how many of those thoughts, of the billions, that you think are related to problems, which are most of them, because what do we worry about all day long, are real? And by real, the definition was reflects external reality such that it truly is causing you a problem. And they'll kind of say, well, all of them. And then we start to look at the thoughts to see how much substance they have. And after 20 minutes or so, we come to an agreement that less than 20% of what we think might be true. But yet we've been thinking all day long, and we've been living in our heads all day long. And what is driving that process, according to this letter, of living in our heads and thinking about our problems all day long?
I don't know if this helps, but we disconnect.
From?
And from the real.
Ooh.
And I don't know if I had this thought, as you know, as above, so below. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that the one life does is to connect. And I can't imagine what that feeling really would be like, to be all connected at once to everything for that. But we emulate that feeling on some level when we do service, when we connect in a positive way, you know, to all of life. So there's some as above, so below feeling of connection that is a part of our being, the best part of our being, the joyful part of our being.
Okay, thank you. I like the word connection, ego, obstruction, service, unity. And yet, as Theosophy tells us, the more we do what we're supposed to do we become more sensitive or more dense? Feeling sensitive, more feelingly aware.
Yes, well, the ancient Lankavatara Buddhist Sutra says that everything is really in the storehouse consciousness. It's called the doctrine of mind only. Mm-hmm. And what we have to realize is that everything we perceive is from our own perspective, unless we can get rid of our illusions and become a Buddha and a bodhisattva, and then we begin to realize that others see things in a different way. Like an animal sees things much differently than we do. A cat can't see as many colors as we do. So ultimately, in reading this ancient sutra, it made me realize that you have to understand that an other sees something different than you, but you have to have total sympathy with the viewpoint of the other, and that would create a universal unity. and a realization that nirvana is found in samsara. I mean, right here, when we're together, this is nirvana.
Okay,
Yeah.
so thank you. Thank you, Judy. And in a sense, that's cutting the Gordian knot and going straight to the quick of it. But if we become sensitive and we become aware, and some of you may remember some of the things that one of the teachers said about coming back into India amongst their own fellow people and how they felt. But based on this letter, if we begin to open up before we experience the bliss, we've got to go through the crud. Think about it. At the heart of your being is the seventh principle that is being referred to in whatever experiential encounter it will give you. Yet, before you get there, what do you have to go through? So as you're losing your ego, which is illusionary in and of itself anyway, I mean, what dies? And that's the beautiful thing about this letter, and I know I sound crazy, but everything in the teaching is in these 4.5 pages. The after-death states, the personality, the 7 principles, the kingdoms, the path, the end result, what we've got to go through, what we've got to do, what we've got to hold on to, what we've got to let go of. So, if our theme is social responsibility, why do you think that is a reality? Again, think about it. The artificial outline of your individuality begins to melt away. The boundary of your being begins to expand, so you're no longer trapped within one body. And all of you have experienced this in some degree with your family and with the ones you love. You walk in the house, and it hits you. And you wonder what's going on. And it is without words, and there's an explanation for it that they give us, and it's also here. But you're simply becoming aware of something that belongs to someone else. So, according to this letter, one of the things that we begin to experience, and again, it has to do with the theme tremendously of social responsibility. When the teacher is here talking about the intellectual portion of humanity, half of which is making their way towards partial annihilation, the other half of which is making their way towards total annihilation, based on how the lower aspect of the intelligent mind works, we end up experiencing how we are contributing to degradation and moral ruin in the world, in our families, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, either by acting or inaction, and a deed of action is a deadly sin, not acting. What do we feel? As the words are here, and I don't think these are literal, although they are literal. The white race must be first to stretch out the hand of fellowship to the dark nations, to call the despised nigger brother. This prospect may not smile for all, but he is no theosophist who objects to this principle. Now, if we take away white and black and just put in the world of opposites, because the last paragraph here, having explained our views and aspirations, I have but a few more words to add. The true religion and philosophy offer the solution of every problem. Not one, not two, not three. A real challenge for us this weekend. Every circle, every study circle that is there is based on this letter, whether known or unknown. This letter addresses every topic in all of those study circles. That the world is in such a bad condition morally, is a conclusive evidence that none of its religions and philosophies, those of the civilized races less than any other, has ever possessed the truth. Now we should switch over and say, whoops, now it's time for Theosophy to enter the arena. But they then ask the question, if those that would work for us misunderstand our intent, our aim, our purposes, and our doctrines, which all have to lean on what? Question. What do they have to do? Brotherhood. That's it. Only one mandate, universal brotherhood. The right and logical explanations on the subject of the problems of the great dual principles. So we can talk about race if we want, we can talk about poverty and riches if we want, but everything is included there. Right and wrong, good and evil, liberty and despotism, pain and pleasure, egotism and altruism are as impossible to them now as they were 1,886 years ago. They are as far from the solution as they were. But to these problems, there must be somewhere a consistent solution. That's our challenge. Do we have to figure out what the solution is? Question. Do we have to figure out what the solution is?
I think what arose in me as you asked that question was, yes, we do have to figure out what the solution is, in the sense that we have to experience the solution within ourselves in order to live it.
Okay, so thank you. Experiential encounter to know. Before we can perhaps, or concurrently with. Danson, you had a statement? You were going to say something?
Yes. What we're thinking is that the great masters are pointing out that the teachings of Theosophy, in this case the fundamentals of Theosophy, the teaching of philosophy, when we really study and assimilate, we will find that they will answer these fundamental questions of what is good, what is evil, what is right, what is despotism, what is liberty, what are all those based upon? How are we going to understand that? And it seems as if it is saying that Theosophy provides us with the framework, the principles, in terms of which then we can solve, experiment, prove it ourselves. Of course, the great teachers themselves, they have proved this. Mm-hmm. But we ourselves have to make it our own, prove it, but we have to test it. So I guess the point is that we are given the framework, Theosophy, which actually has the solution to all these problems.
Thank you.
But we ourselves have to actually assimilate, think about it, and so on. Anyway,
gosh, so we've got to do some work. Thank you. We've got to assimilate. Now, and let me go back to the beginning of the letter. And again, this is an amazing, bold statement.
Gene, excuse me, before we leave this subject to the question, I don't think we need to figure out a solution.
Okay.
Just because most of the tradition have figured out for us, have demonstrated, including Theosophy, of course. So the solution exists in most of the tradition. We just need to implement it, the practice.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's just look at that from the subjective and the objective side. Subjectively, in regards to eternal truth, the answer is there. Objectively, to the degree that we identify with our bodies, we got to figure it out. But, as was said, we're being provided with a teaching. And this is, again, this first sentence, it's at least strikes this individual as amazing and bold. The doctrine we promulgate being the only true one. That's bold. The only true one. Who can say that? Who could say that? No hesitations, no doubts, no worries, no concerns. The only true one, supported by such evidence as we are preparing to give. Has it been given? Has the evidence been given? I'm sorry?
Absolutely. But you have to, oh sorry, I have to stand. Yes, I think the evidence are giving, but I think not in the way that we have received a letter from one of the masters and say, please read and study because this is the evidence. But if we look from theosophical point of view, what happens around us, we see many evidence about what is predicted already in the secret doctrine and so on and so on. So it's no problem at all.
Thank you, sir. Very simple. No problem at all. The rest of the sentence. Oh, yes.
Can you elaborate on the evidence? Where is the evidence?
Ah.
Joe Schmo on the street that I used to speak with. If I'm the typical Joe Schmo on the street, like my friends and whom I try to talk to Theosophy about Theosophy, and they ask me the same question, show me the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
I would be hard-pressed to show them anything. The only evidence I can show them is their own karma on their own back. And again, that's a cyclical
their own
karma on their own back. Meaning
What
that,
else do you
when
mean?
they get hit in the head, by karma, so to speak, then that's evidence. Of course, they don't believe that that's the case, right? Until they get hit in the head again, right?
Okay.
But for doing the same thing again. So where is the evidence besides the few laws of karma? When you talk to people about it, I think you're crazy anyway. So where is that evidence? I mean, at least I have a hard time providing more evidence to others if I were to be asked that question.
Okay. And so, again, let me...
I would say that the evidence is this letter, both this letter as well as all of the theosophical literature that we have been the beneficiaries of. But it takes a person of a certain degree of awareness to recognize that fact.
That word awareness. Thank you. Thank you. So, and let me try to come back to that, but let me finish the sentence. Because again, this has kept me up personally night after night. Because it's just, it's nothing short of amazing. Hello? Okay. Supported by such evidence as we are preparing to give, become ultimately triumphant. Not it might, not maybe if we do A, B will happen. It will become ultimately triumphant. I mean, just those two words, ultimately. Does ultimate leave anything outside of it? No. I mean, again, bold. That's really bold. Yet, and here's another question, why? Yet it, evidence, doctrine, teaching, view, must be inculcated gradually. It is absolutely necessary to inculcate it gradually. Why? Number one, what is it? Number two, why does it have to be a gradual introduction?
I believe that's a critical point, because they're not looking for revolution. They're looking for evolution. And revolutions, even though they do not occur gradually, do not last. It's a sudden change up and down, and that's it. However, slow and deliberate evolution, one person at a time, does last.
Okay, thank you. And on that note, and this was not staged, I have to piggyback and go to again, HPB's article, The Beacon Light of the Unknown, because she says, the great reform must take place without any social shocks, without a drop of blood being spilled, which can happen in no other way than by the recognition and the axiomatic truth of Oriental philosophy. Here's the catch, which teaches us that the great diversity of fortune, of social rank, and of intellect is due but to the personal karma of each human being. Answer. Now, I'm sorry? Oh, okay, so then let me end on this wonderful note. In terms of what we're challenged with this weekend, again, they foresaw it all, they know it all. All we have to do is check the news, look at what's going on in the world, see how we treat our neighbors. But they say, again, they are as far from the solution as they were. But to these problems, there must be somewhere a consistent solution. And if our doctrines will show their competence to offer it, then the world will be the first to confess there must be the true philosophy, the true religion, the true light, which gives truth and nothing but the truth. So that's our challenge for the weekend. They say it's here, the answers are there, and now we get time to go to the study circles and see what we can come up with in light of the information that has been provided. Thank you.